specifically, it's a seller certificate that goes into the land titles office when we submit our documents for the transfer to go through. So with that seller certificate, it sets out that the undersigned sellers certify that they are residents of Canada for all purposes arising under the Income Tax Act, including but not limited to Section 116, subsection 5 thereof. We then have to get them to sign that if they are in fact a resident of Canada. So there's an important distinguishment, though, that's where it's not that you are a citizen of Canada. It's not that you have Canadian citizenship. It's that you actually are legally a resident for the purpose of the Income Tax Act. And the reason why that becomes an issue is that the Income Tax Act and the specific sections have made it clear that that declaration, number one, has to be vetted and ensured that that person is in fact a Canadian resident by the realtor who's listing the property for sale. And then secondly, that when they meet with the lawyers, that we have to also determine that the seller is in fact a resident as well under the Income Tax Act. The problem is under the Income Tax Act is it's not very specific. It's not clear as to, well, what is a resident, what is not. So it creates a bit of an ambiguity in terms of that. But the problem then is that if the person is questionably a resident of Canada, us as the lawyers, then as part of the due diligence, we have to ensure that if the seller may not be a resident, they have to actually apply for what's called a clearance certificate through Canada Revenue Agency. So there's actual documentation that they have to file in order to then be cleared, so that then any of the sale proceeds are not subject and not taxable, or subject to having to pay taxes to Revenue Canada on those sale proceeds. So the issue is that if that isn't determined properly and somebody buys a property and they rely upon the representations within the real estate contract that the person is a resident of Canada, and then they also rely upon the representations of the lawyers who then submit those documents to land titles, and it turns out that the person was not in fact a resident of Canada, Revenue Canada can then actually go and attach a lien against that purchaser's property for the unpaid taxes that were due by the non-resident selling that property to them.